Zhang Kunlun was once the head of the sculpture department at Shandong Arts College in northern China, a celebrated artist and accomplished professor traveling between China and Canada. Many of his outdoor sculptures became famous monuments in mainland China, and his artwork became a favorite of collectors. Today, he lives and works in North America, exiled from his native China because he is a practitioner of Falun Dafa, a spiritual practice that was banned by then Chinese President Jiang Zemin in 1999. In June of 2000, he was living in China, where he was arrested and thrown into a prison camp. In the prison, he was tortured mercilessly. 3 months later, with pressure from the Canadian government, Professor Zhang was released and returned to Canada. His experiences of spiritual repression in China affected him deeply as a person and as an artist. He wanted to find a way to break through the media blockade in China and get the truth out about the millions of innocent people suffering under the oppression. Falun Dafa, also known as Falun Gong, gained wide popularity after its founder, Master Li Hongzhi, introduced it to the public in the early 1990s. Falun Dafa is a practice of self-cultivation, using gentle Qigong exercises, meditation, and contemplation of the principles of truth, compassion, and forbearance. The practice was simple to learn and completely free, and according to Chinese government surveys, Falun Dafa had soon attracted between 70 and 100 million people in China, and had also expanded overseas, with people of all races practicing in over 60 countries around the globe. On July 20th, 1999, China announced a crackdown on Falun Gong, unleashing a massive and vicious propaganda campaign, and mobilizing the political machinery of the entire country to force people to give up their belief in the practice. Independent investigations confirm that to date almost 900 people have been beaten to death, with many more unaccounted for. More than 100 individual types of torture are known to have been used on them. Such images are captured in sketches done by Amy Lee, who was imprisoned a total of 7 times in China. Amy Lee was originally a fashion designer. She spent 3 months in a Chinese prison for refusing to publicly renounce Falun Gong. The authorities forced her husband, a government official, to divorce her and take custody of their 3-year-old daughter. With no job and no family to go home to, she finally left and settled in the United States. She spent the next few years in attempts to rescue her daughter, who was finally allowed to join her in New York City. Back in his home in Canada, Professor Zhang began discovering a new community of artists who, like him, had suffered in one way or another under the Chinese government's persecution against Falun Gong. Eventually, the idea for an exhibit focusing on these people, their experiences, and their art was born. In an unheated, makeshift workshop, Professor Zhang and several other artists began putting together the collection. News of the proposed exhibit began to get around, and before long, artists from all around the world were calling in to take part, and the exhibit began to take shape. What surfaced was a rich and varied range of work, from shockingly graphic charcoal representations of torture to subtle and refined portrayals of spiritual realms, testimony to the strength and resilience of these peaceful people. Miss Zhang Cuiying is a traditional Chinese painter living in Australia. She spent 8 months in a Chinese prison for refusing to sign a paper stating that she would give up Falun Dafa. In the prison, she was denied access to writing instruments, so she used toothpaste and soot from the floor to write a poem about her experiences on her own clothing. In general, her artwork reflects the more traditional style of Chinese painting, depicting maidens in elegant attire and landscapes of a heavenly paradise. Artist Wei Jane Chi is also a practitioner of Falun Dafa. One day in July 2001, she received a package from a friend. Wrapped in layers of plastic, it had apparently come from China and had passed through many hands. Concerned that it might contain undeveloped film, she opened it in her darkroom. Inside were 2 developed photographs dated May 13th, the official Falun Dafa day. They depicted a young man holding up a handwritten sign in Beijing's Tiananmen Square, reading truth, compassion, forbearance. Such an act of defiance usually leads to arrest, incarceration, torture, and even death at the hands of Chinese officials. Wei Jane spent 7 weeks producing a series of copperplate prints comprised of these and other images of the persecution of Falun Dafa. Each of these artists is forever linked to the fates of the tens of millions of Falun Dafa practitioners in mainland China and around the world, for they all share something unique, a faith that they cannot describe in words, but they are attempting to convey through art. It is their compassion for their fellow beings that has given many of them the inner strength to overcome hardship without rancor or regret, and it is their faith that gives them the hope that they may one day see a more enlightened world.